over there as well, production? You're sharing it
want
now?
production.
Okay.
I be like you when I want a production team behind
Yo,
me.
this is my family. I got that
Every
production from Tabitha. Did you do you watch Tabitha, or do you know Tabitha Brown? She's vegan. Yeah, but yeah, I just production is anybody helping me.
my husband loves
Production.
her.
Yes, awesome. So now that we're good to go, we're public. It looks like we're sharing and everything is good. Let's go ahead. You were talking about this week and just talking about the amazing things you guys did. What do you think attributed to that?
I think a few things. So with our network, we're very clear on who our target audience is.
Hmm.
We're very clear on our mission, and we are very intentional about cultivating relationships, not with just our target audience, but also the partners and funders that make our work possible. And so we usually have a large gathering. We have it every year. We've had it every year for the last 3 years. And so now that we're all virtual, we're like, how are we going to
Hmm.
do this? What are we going to do? And the key thing is, before we decided anything, we listened. We listened closely to what our sponsors wanted. We listened closely to what our target audience, which is African American and racially diverse young adults between the ages of 18 and 35. And by listening, it helped us to integrate their stories with our stories, make strategic decisions about how we're going to take this amazing in-person event and 10 exit to a virtual event. And so after listening and after really hearing what was important, we created a happy hour experience, and we were able to kind of just re-engage that excitement. And then we just asked the question, are you all in? And it was like, hashtag
Hmm.
all in, hashtag all. We're like, yeah. and
All
so
right.
so now it's like what that says to us, it's even more opportunities, it's even more scholarships, it's even more internships, it's even more young adults going to graduate school right after undergrad. And so we're just so appreciative to have partners that are all in, and are ready to make a difference in this world. And that's been great.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And I don't want to even skip over that first step that you talked about, which is listening. So many times we just like have an idea or things start going and we start creating things without ever really being connected, especially if you're new in the nonprofit area.
Mm.
I always say the first thing you can do that'll make it a lot easier for you if you're new or thinking about starting a nonprofit is first to get involved with a similar nonprofit or serve in some type of area to be able to start connecting with that community and see, verify that there is even a need,
Mm.
and that and that they are accessing those types of needs right now. Because one question that, as you know, as a fellow grant writer, that they ask very often is, how are you going to connect? What type of community do you already have? And
Mm.
people think like, oh, I just want to do this or I want to create this program, but they don't think about that step of, now how do I connect that program to the community, and is that space already filled locally? So I think that pre-planning point is just such a huge point to sink in, that preparation and
Mhm.
connecting with your community first. Absolutely.
And you know what I think was helpful for us to is like that scale, like you said, right? Not trying to raise 13K in 7 days when we just launched a program,
Hmm. Right.
right? Because
Which is awesome.
which would be awesome. And I'm not saying don't do it if you can't do it, but
Right.
taking those necessary steps, like you said, to learn from who's doing the work, point of departure, what is it that I have to offer that they do not. Um, and then for me personally, and I don't know if you feel like this, but grant writing really helped us to tell our story. Like the
Hmm.
intentionality about sitting down and writing a grant proposal makes you think about not only who you are, but what you do, how you do it, how do you measure those outcomes, how do you communicate in a way that a funder comes, because a lot of people have the misconception, I'm just going to write a grant and they're going to throw all of this money. No, it's a partnership. It's like a marriage, right? A funder has
Hmm.
to have some equal footing with you to know that there's going to be a partnership right? That you're bringing some things to the table, and that there's a certain level of leverage that you're making your nonprofit better as well as their funding organization better.
Absolutely. Hmm.
And that there's accountability, that you're not just taking the money and doing whatever, but you are committed to the mission that they are also committed to. And so having that discipline and intentionality in learning the art of writing grants has helped us to better articulate our story to others.
Absolutely. And that's such a huge piece, that partnership piece when it comes to writing. So many times I've had people come and think like it's some type of system that they don't do anything or there's no program or no, and just something comes from over here and they have some grant funds. And I'm like,
Like,
no, it's two sides
I'm
here.
not a magician. Okay, I can
Exactly.
make a program
Exactly.
that doesn't exist.
And I like to say, imagine that this is your funds. Imagine that this is them. Say, pretend someone's asking you to borrow some money or asking you very much so for a gift. And what are the questions you would ask? Ask yourself those questions. What would you want to know? What type of plan would you want to see before you release these funds? So I think that's a huge piece, that it's a partnership. It's about developing your organization, because money follows action. Money follows
Mm,
community. All
that's
of those
good.
things
You
are
guys
already
better
getting
post
going.
that. Money follows action. I like that one. That's good.
Absolutely. Money follows action, because a lot of times, one of the biggest pieces, and I think I might even saw this, we're going to be tagging some of Natalie's, one of which is 6 innovative ways to raise funds for ministries, correct?
Ministries and nonprofits. Yes.
Ministries and nonprofits. We're going to
Mhm.
be adding that link below so you guys will have access with that to that as well. But what I was saying was that we were talking a little bit about which area. Completely lost my train of thought there. Which area were we talking about?
We were
The
talking about grant writing and
Yes, the grant writing area and the partnership. The partnership when it comes to grant writing, that it's a partnership. You're developing the organization and making sure that you're presenting some things, because a lot of times it's a little bit more difficult to get funding for an idea than it is for something that has been proven. What have you found when it comes to the difference of that funding for something that's just in this idea stage and funding for something that has just a little bit? It doesn't have to be huge, but if you can get some type of proven numbers behind what you're doing, how much does that help?
I think it's the difference between um I'll put it this way. Difference between your freshman year in college and your senior thesis paper.
Okay. There you go. There you
You
go.
have done the work.
Mhm.
You have built
Mhm.
the relationships. You have had
Mhm.
conversations with your professors. You've invested your own time and resources. And so the product that you, or the service, or the experience that you provide your community that you serve, your ideal audience, is tested, is proven, is systematized in a way that speaks at a larger reach than thinking about it in your head. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah,
Um, and
absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
I think we tend to start with what we want to see, but it's the work that we actually put in, the sweat equity, the social capital, the political capital, the listening to the stories, the sharing of the stories. That process is what brings you to, as you said, the action, the money follows, right? But if I just sit
Right.
here
Absolutely.
with a great idea and ask somebody to fund it, then there's a level of ignorance, right? I can't fund something I can't see. I can't invest in something that you haven't invested in.
Absolutely. And it's a fine tuning, because what you start to realize as you do the work, I don't know if you've ever seen this as an entrepreneur, but you start to work on a project or do something and you're like, oh, wait a minute, this didn't go right. Let me switch this up. Let me change. Oh, look at that over there. And no one wants their money involved in that process. They want you to kind of, they want you to work all those things out prior to. And so
Mhm.
that's such an important piece right there, doing the work. And then another thing you talked about was a clear mission. And I think that that's part of it. Doing the work fine tunes that mission as well. But you talked about being clear with who your target audience is and who your mission is. What does that look like? For an example, who is your target audience? What's
Yeah,
your mission for that particular organization?
yeah. So, and we have so many. Sometimes I'm like, wait. So,
Right.
being clear of like, what does the church need versus what does the National Network of Young Adults need versus what do our clients need. But I'm going to focus on Lit Today, which is the initiative of the National Network of Young Adults. So our target audience are young adults between the ages of 18 to 35. And so what does that look like, right? Because 18 to 35 is a large transitional year in the lives of young adults. And so we have our undergrads. Where do we find them? Particularly and predominantly on historically Black colleges and universities. So that's a large piece of our base. And then our goal is to kind of journey with them on this pipeline, right? So we take them from undergrad. Hopefully they're answering their call to ministry and they're going to United Methodist colleges and seminaries, right? That's my son. And so we
I
journey with
understand.
them. And then they're answering their call and their profession. And so then we journey with them either to the church or to nonprofits or to education. And so there's this span of relationship building that we are literally doing life with these young adults. And so young adults who we met 4 years ago were in undergrad and they're finishing seminary now.
Wow.
They're
That's
starting their
awesome.
own businesses. And so we're able to capture those stories. So who's
Hmm.
going to be interested in that? Seminaries,
Hmm.
graduate schools, recruiters. People are looking to hire the best and the brightest talent, particularly as we have this conversation around diversity, inclusion, and equity. And so who are those people? Those are our sponsors and our partners who give
Absolutely.
resources so that we can develop these leaders so ultimately their businesses and organizations could be sustainable and can thrive because they have these amazing innovative leaders who we've spent 4 to 6 to 8 years developing them so that they can provide amazing leadership in the
Wow.
future.
Wow. Wow. I need to get in contact with them so I can get one of them over here because, like I said, one of the things we're talking
I
about
got
today is
you, Tracy.
expanding.
I
Get
got you.
but pour them on. Yeah. I'm like, yes, and that's what you want. What it sounds like to me is you focus on one of my favorite quotes, which is creating win-wins. Just creating win-wins all around. Number one, you're talking about a relationship, which I think that is so huge when it comes to the nonprofit sector. I love nonprofits that create those long-term relationships because that's the area that's a lot of times really missing. It is important for you to just have the food, the nonprofits that provide the food and the shelter and all those things as well.
Mhm,
But those relationships is an integral part that's a lot of times missing as well. And when you're creating those relationships,
mhm.
like you said, that's kind of building something that's long term and also something that's going to be more beneficial to the community later on. So
And
again, you're focused on your mission.
and there's a
I'm sorry.
system. There's a system to that. There's an intentionality that you have to put in to do that. Particularly when
Mhm.
you talk about like just for our numbers, I'm a full-time staff person, and then we have two interns, which is not a large staff when you're dealing with 300 young adults, 35 HBCU partners, 15
Wow.
like when we start putting on the numbers, just three of us. That's a lot of output and
Yes.
work to manage. And so you have to be systematic about how do you cultivate those relationships continually. And I think having the right communications, as well as designing experiences that speak to everyone in your base is important. And a lot of nonprofits don't take the time to be intentional about that.
Absolutely. And how do you handle that's something that I'm going to be talking about this month a lot, which is something we're going through right now. How do you handle that type of communication? And one thing we talked about in our call before was that you're an extrovert and I'm the total opposite. I'm an introvert. So it's probably super simple to you. But like you said, those numbers, 300 young adults, and the other numbers, how do you handle communications with just three of you as a team? Majority of our nonprofits are about there. They have three to
Yeah, like
four team
Tracy,
members.
to be honest, that's like a whole nother live because it's, it's so
That's a whole nother, that's packed.
it's a whole nother
Uh-huh.
live. But
Hmm.
I would say designing intentionally, knowing how to capture contact information, how to follow up, um, when you're throwing events, what the goal is, having like just it's so many layers to it. But I think also looking at, what are the major ways that I'm communicating with my base, be it social media, email, phone, text, right? And then for me, each one of the people who are part of our network, we have to speak to them differently. So the young adults, we're speaking to them on Instagram. The chaplains, we're speaking to them on Facebook. Our
Hmm.
partners, we're speaking to them on LinkedIn and email. And so there has to be a system in place to understand who you're talking to, what their needs are, and how do you automate that as much as possible,
Hmm. Hmm.
and become intentional. And that's the piece I think a lot of nonprofits don't take the time to think about.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that you do really well. Just being a
Thank
part as
you.
far as the automation and the systematic, having that system in place, like you said, that's huge. That's huge because it doesn't have to look like for a person like me, and I see here a number 300 or something, I'm thinking like I'm talking to that person 300 people a day or something of that. It doesn't have to look like that. It could look like one video, like you said, it could look like certain platforms that you're making sure you're showing up in as well. So that's wonderful information. I know you're going to tag your link as well, and we're going on about 30 minutes here. I know you're going to tag your link for the 6 innovative ways to
Yep.
raise funds, and you already talked about a couple.
Yep.
So you kind of already talked about a couple. What would you say would be the top thing that someone can do to increase their fundraising potential as a nonprofit?
I think when you're clear about your mission and what you're doing and what your programming is, go for the low hanging fruit. So for us, the low hanging fruit was grants and scholarships, and using our ability to tell our story to scale, right? And understanding, right? So this concept of having six revenue streams for your nonprofit is really what it takes for a millionaire to become a millionaire. You need six streams of
Mm-hmm.
revenue. And so
Mm-hmm.
building it to scale, not saying, right off the bat, I'm going to do six revenue streams and then there's no sustainability and there's no consistency, but building on it. So for our first year, it was grants. That was the low hanging fruit. And then from the grants, we were able to go to our second, which was products, merch, and experiences. So our conference. And so conference was like every year, it was like, all right, we got $50,000 grant, we got a $75,000 grant, then we got $100,000 grant. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then with our registration, because we grew that, then our registration was like 150, 300, 450. And then it was like, oh, we're throwing a 20K event. So it's like as you build every year, you build on those. So one, grants; two, products, merch, services, experiences. And then the third one, which is what we're moving into now, is reoccurring giving. So whether that's like a subscription or a membership, whether it's, just asking donors to think, instead of giving us a one-time gift a year, giving monthly. What that does is just help with your cash flow. It also helps with how you engage with your givers. And so those are three things for us that were like the low-hanging fruit. And again, we're still building on each of those as we grow and as we go.
Absolutely. That's such a huge piece right there that you just said is building. Now, I like to call it when someone contacts me and we're talking about grant funding, I like to say the snowball effect. Like you want to
Mm-hmm.
build, you don't want to just come in with this idea and you need 600K. You know what I mean? There's so many steps in between there. And so slowly building that and that's the work. The work is,
Mm-hmm.
hey, this is our mission. So if we built to $100 this month. Okay, that's all right. That's 100 that came into our nonprofit for the first time that no one knew about. Now, next month, where are we going to get to? And being okay with that process, being okay with just slowly building. And then another thing you talked about was the reoccurring giving, which is huge as well. And if you can start with your board, I know as serving
Mm-hmm.
on Coburn Place Board, which is a domestic violence shelter, they have a requirement for their board, a minimum per year that they give in general. And the goal is to have every board member set up on reoccurring giving. Because number one, you know that the board is tied to the mission as well, just as much tied to the mission financially, as far as their ideas and other things as well. But when someone is reoccurring, that's an even deeper tie. No matter what the amount is, it
Mm-hmm.
really says how much they're supporting your organization for a long-term period. Because
Yeah.
sometimes someone can come to an event, give a donation, and not think about or remember the organization from there to then, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So I think that's a very good point.
And as an organization, and I think this is the thing that, burns my biscuits as a new to nonprofit consulting and as a nonprofit leader, is you have to have the system in place to do that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
don't go giving hard for me.
Right. I don't have to. Exactly. Exactly. Don't make,
Invest
because
in,
any little, you better say that again.
invest in a system that makes it easy for me to give. Because if I gotta call you and the secretary to see if my check got there, like if I could only write a check, like make giving easy. Be intentional if you want to grow your business, to invest in the systems and the structure that it needs, so that it's continual, it's automatic, and that it's the experience for the person that's giving, makes them want to come back and give even more.
Absolutely. And that's a good example of that is Amazon, because you can get whatever you need within the click of a button. It makes it easy. Like, well, why do I want to go to
You
the
know,
site,
so easy.
put my stuff in there? you know,
My son is 3. He almost bought someone on Amazon. I was like, oh no, no,
hold
no,
on a minute. It's almost too easy, but you wanna have that process. It's a difference to me. We were just talking about one of our service providers that we have to call them to make the payment, is the thing that they do. But then they're so busy because they don't have the systems in place that majority of the time we're hounding them down trying to call them to make the payment. They're not answering the phone. We're like, oh, we might change them out with another company, because if we can't make our payment, we have to call. That's so important. It's huge. And there's so many systems available for that.
Mm-hmm.
So many systems available.
And
Absolutely.
to scale, right? Like, don't go buy the most expensive communication platforms if you only emailing 50 people, like just scale it and grow, as you need. Because if giving is easy, if you write relationships consistent, you'll see, like, there's a part of us as a team is like, we knew we were going to do a great, so we knew we were going to do a great event and that we were going to get donors. We were like, oh snap, this is like a really, really, when we hit 30 days, it was like, oh, we really
Look,
did.
and how important do you think your team dynamic was in that? Because you talk about your team, and I can just tell that there's so much team
um,
development that you guys probably implement, and having a great team is a huge piece as well.
Yeah, and it's a new team, and so here's another thing about being intentional. I'm the program coordinator, and I'm the only full-time staff. So I rely a lot on, the people who are part of our network, who believe in the work. But I also knew I needed staff, and we weren't as an organization in 4 years. We're not at the place necessarily that we want to put all of our funding into personnel. And so I
Hmm.
wrote a grant, and that grant gave me 2 part-time interns, but they're amazing interns.
Wow.
Um, and so that automatically, just adding them to the team, 10x our potential and abilities.
Hmm.
So yeah, and then our executive director, our interim director, they're all fully supportive. And so having that energy, having, for me, the extrovert, that collaboration helped to make the work go forward. And granted, we only took 2 days, to plan our little virtual event. But the intentionality and the conversations beforehand made that 1 hour and 30-minute experience for our partners worthy of, coming back and helping us do this new thing, right? Because this is
Hmm.
definitely new than what we've done before, but they love us, they trust us. because we've always been transparent. We've always been consistent in our communication. So we're appreciative,
And you're
and
providing, and the results are proven. You're proving the results. That's the biggest part. I like to say, grants like numbers, and I think I read that in yours as well. They like to see those numbers. Who are you connecting with? And that's the work. The work is actually impacting in the way that you're set to impact. So actually, we're growing our team on this side. So hopefully
listen,
we'll be the
y'all,
next.
I'm gonna say it for you because you're so super humble. Tracy is the truth. He is out
Well,
here
thank you.
the game, changing the world. Like, you're phenomenal. I'm shout out to Reg who connected us, Reg Butler.
Thank you. Yes, shout out to Reg. Actually, he's going to be coming on talking about team development. He's going to be coming on in a couple of weeks talking about the DIS method. I want to say I'm saying it correctly.
Yeah,
With just identifying, you've heard of it before. And
yeah.
so
I
he's
use
going to
it
be talking a
also
little
in
bit about.
my team. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So he's going to be talking about that as well. He's probably did we have any questions over there on your end? Can you see?
Some just comments. Reg actually commented.
Okay, awesome. Yep. So he's going to be coming on soon, guys. So you'll definitely hear from him. Like I said, we're adding to our team. I'm going to come on another video and talk a little bit about that and just who we're looking for and things like that and what they can do to be a part of it. We have some contractors we've been working with for some time, but it's just time. It's time. And when you have more coming in than you can handle, typically that means it's time for you to hire someone, or
Mm,
it's either time for you to get or exchange or get another mentor possibly. The goal
mm,
is for you to have someone who that you're always talking to that is at the level above you. So
mm.
that way you're able to, just glean from they've been here before, and so just that gleaning off that mentorship and mentee experience and also putting other people into place to learn as well. So we're going to be hiring for a couple of positions. I'll talk about that momentarily. Thank you so much for jumping in and utilizing your live service here. I'll definitely be looking into that, and some of our other nonprofits can look into it as well. And hopefully, we can have you come back as well, guys. Once again, before we wrap up, you have the link under there for your
The link is here, yes. It's in the comment section, www.nathalieNelsonparker.com/revenue. And that will give you the free ebook, 6 innovative ways to generate revenue for your church or nonprofit without stressing your leaders. Great ebook. And there's also an offer in there for my free masterclass and the art of securing grants.
Awesome. And if you happen to be watching and you're in the position right now where you don't have a nonprofit, or you're like, I would love to fund, but what do I do first? One of the things we specialize in is that legal setup. So we'll make sure we include your link down there as well, so that you can get legally set up, have your 501c3, your articles of incorporation, all the things in place needed, and all of your compliancy things together, so that that's not an issue when it comes to raising funds for your organization.
Definitely,
So
definitely.
all right. Well, thank you so much. It was wonderful chatting with you, and we will see
Thank
you guys in the
you.
next live.